So I know mindfulness is this hot topic lately that you hear everybody talking about. You hear everybody telling you, meditate, you'll feel so much better. You're feeling stressed, go meditate. And, that's true. Mindfulness and meditation is extremely helpful. But I also want to explain a little bit more thoroughly what it is, how it can actually help, how you can practice it, and how it's incorporated into therapy. Um, so, mindfulness-based therapy is something that I do also incorporate into my practice. So, I want to explain a little bit about what that looks like. So, I'm Dr. Morgan Levy, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in Florida. So, I want to start with explaining the definition of mindfulness. So, mindfulness is just the ability to focus on the present moment without ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. A lot easier said than done, and it takes a lot of time and practice to be able to develop that. It's a skill. I like to tell my clients that mindfulness and becoming a mindful person is like it's almost like we have to work out our mindfulness muscle. It's something that takes time and practice for us to develop, and we have to practice different ways of mindfulness, and I'll discuss that in a bit, so that in general we become a more mindful person. So, some of the benefits of mindfulness are decreased stress, decreased anxiety, decreased depression, improved sleep, improved relaxation. You feel more of a sense of calm, decreased loneliness. There's so many benefits of it that, I always recommend to find some way of practicing it that works for you. And there's so many different ways. Mindfulness, there's also been research to show that mindfulness helps us physically. There's research to show that it helps with chronic pain, with headaches, stress, muscle tension. There's even been some research on mindfulness-based interventions for people with high blood pressure and diabetes to show how it helps with those symptoms. So overall, mindfulness is pretty helpful and beneficial to us if we're able to practice it. So I'm going to explain a little bit more some of the characteristics of being a mindful person. So, one of the general characteristics of mindfulness is that ability of awareness, of being able to be aware. And this means that you're just better able to pay attention to what's going on in your life. So, the idea here is to get off of autopilot and more into awareness of what's happening. Another characteristic is something we call a beginner's mind. So this is the ability to see things as if you were seeing it for the first time. So if you think of a child, as they're growing up, they keep experiencing things for the first time, and they're much more eager and interested. And so a characteristic of mindfulness is us being able to do the same thing, even if it's something we've seen over and over again. If we're able to look at it as new and maybe notice something new about it, that's a trait of being mindful. Another characteristic is non-judgment. So this is a really difficult and tricky one that I work on a lot with my clients, and this involves being an unbiased observer of your own experiences. So not labeling things as good or bad, but just as what they are. So this definitely takes a lot of time to practice, and that's not an easy one. Acceptance is another trait. And this is similar to the non judgment. So it's almost like the combination of being aware, having that beginner's mind, and non judgment. So through this acceptance, we experience things in our life as they are without the need for judgment. Mindfulness also involves self compassion. And, that goes with what we spoke about before, but having self compassion and non judgment towards ourselves. And then also, a huge component of mindfulness is non striving. So, not trying to get away from where you are. And I know that might seem kind of confusing, but basically, with mindfulness, you're not trying to get to the next thing. You're just staying in the moment and focusing on what's happening in the moment. All right. So, the overall purpose of mindfulness is to pay attention to our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and what we're experiencing as they occur in a non judgmental way. So, mindfulness can be practiced in so many different ways, and any of these techniques that work for you, all of them help you work out that mindfulness muscle so that you become more of a mindful person so that you get the benefits that I mentioned earlier. Because, I mean, we would all want those benefits and to not feel like we're always on edge all the time. We want to be able to feel calm and not stressed, and mindfulness can help us do that. So, in general, I would say that there's two broad ways to practice mindfulness. We have formal strategies and informal strategies. The formal strategies are more of the meditations. So, I know I've done a few videos with guided meditations where you sit, you listen to a script or not, and you focus on whatever the meditation is guiding you to do or what's going on in that moment. And that is a little bit more structured, where you might want to schedule some time out of your day, make sure there's no distractions. And some people love those techniques. And then there's also the informal strategies. So these are more quick strategies that you can do throughout the day that aren't necessarily requiring you to sit down and meditate. So I have a few videos of informal strategies as well that you can just use throughout the day. So, for example, I have a video on the stop technique, which I could link to in the comments, which is just a quick way to practice mindfulness in the moment. And personally, that's one of my favorite techniques to use because it's so quick and it helps me within just a few moments stretch and practice and grow my mindfulness muscle. So, we also talk a lot about mindfulness based therapy, and that can look different for a bunch of different providers and how they incorporate mindfulness. So, I can tell you a little bit about my experience with that. So, mindfulness based therapy is often provided in a group format where maybe for a few weeks, every week, you discuss mindfulness, how it's involved in your life, and you practice strategies to find out what works for you. And then with other group members, you discuss with them the experiences. And just that act alone is also practicing mindfulness. You can really practice mindfulness everywhere. It just takes a few moments, and it's really just focusing on the present moment. So, one way that I like to incorporate mindfulness into therapy sessions is working with the individual to figure out where maybe they're being mindful in their life, where they're not being mindful, where they would like to change it, and what are the most effective strategies that we could use to start incorporating into their life that they would actually want to do, fit into their busy schedule, and they would gain benefit from. And we try to start out smaller because if we start out too big with like these long meditations, then it can feel very overwhelming and someone may not want to do it. So a common not critique, but more of a concern I get with people practicing mindfulness is they're like, well, I just get distracted within a few minutes. It's not working for me. And I just want to, like, if that's something that you experience, I want to remind you that the goal, and it's also really hard, the goal of mindfulness isn't to just stay in the present moment, but it's more about to be aware of what's happening in the present moment. So we're all going to get distracted. You might only be able to focus for 1 second before your mind's distracted again, and that's totally okay. What you want to do is once you realize that, you're like, okay, I got distracted. Let me go back to the activity or back to focusing on what's happening right now, and then do that. And then you might get distracted again and just do the same thing. So the goal is us practicing trying to be aware of what's going on inside of us in the present moment. I've been doing mindfulness for a few years now, and I still get distracted. It's okay. It's normal. We're going to have our ups and downs when it comes to practicing this. It's not always going to be completely easy. And remember, we're not having a goal of being an expert. It's us just trying to raise our awareness of what's going on. Let's see if I have any other common complaints. I do get a lot of people that, they say this is really weird. And, it is weird, especially if it's something that you haven't practiced before. It's new, it feels strange, it feels weird. And my suggestion there is to just try it and keep trying different strategies and techniques, either whether it's formal or informal, to see what works for you. When you're first starting out practicing mindfulness, I suggest taking just a few minutes every day, find whatever time works in your schedule, and practice one technique, one small technique, and see what you notice. I do recommend starting out practicing it when you're at your most calm, because it's a lot easier to start with that than if you decide to start when you're most stressed, because it's a lot more difficult to practice it at that time. So overall, mindfulness is the ability to stay in the present moment, There's tons of ways to practice it because there's so many benefits. Um, if you have any questions about mindfulness or what mindfulness-based therapy is like, please post them in the comments below. And if you found that this video was helpful, please like it and share it with anybody else who you think might benefit from it. All right, take care.